Hey, welcome to a fresh look at drum roll. We need sound effects. Habits. Whose idea was this topic? God, habits.
Habits. Hmm.
I just actually looked up the definition of habit because I was like, what technically does it mean? And one of the definitions is a long, loose garment worn by a member of a religious order. I don't think
That's what we're,
was
is
that the
that what
one?
we're talking about? I thought we were talking about other clothes.
Absolutely.
I think the definition of habit we're referring to is a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. Now, I know I have regular tendencies, but are they hard to give up? I'm looking at you, Tom.
I don't know.
What? But because when I think about it, a habit is something that usually it just happens. I don't really think about it much. But at some point, I'm not doing it. So I don't really know that it's hard to give up. So that part of the definition was very interesting to me. What do you see about habits, Bernie?
Well, sometimes they can be hard to give up, or at least have the appearance of that. For example, there's a joke about smokers. The smoker that would say, "Oh, smoking's easy to give up. I've done it thousands of times." So some habits can be, it seems like they're really difficult to break. And I've had the experience of a habit shifting in an instant. So maybe it's both. Maybe they can be easy to give up at times and sometimes not.
Well, what was it, Bernie? Can you share the story of a habit you gave up like that?
Yes. And it was such a good habit. I didn't even know it was a habit, right? That's how ingrained it was. And let's just say it was a habit that once I realized I had it, I didn't want to continue with it. And it was the habit of people pleasing, specifically saying yes when inside it was a no. Anyone else? You don't have to raise your hand, but if you want to, feel free. Anyone else done that kind of people pleasing? I see at least one hand. Two, three. Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't alone. But I don't know why this shifted. But one day, I mean, I don't even know if I would have even call myself a people pleaser at that point. Um, I was somewhat unaware of it, but I started noticing that sometimes when I get asked a question to do something, that there was a no that I could feel, and I was sensitive to it, and I couldn't dishonor it anymore. And in the past, maybe I was aware of it, but it was more important for me to say yes, even though that wasn't really what I wanted. And as soon as I started noticing my no, that was it. It was game over. It was literally night and day. And I've had other habits that it took a while for them to unwind, like the habit of feeling stressed. And I still feel stressed from time to time, but because I'm really clear in my mind that the habit of feeling stressed doesn't serve me, when I notice it, that's it. It stops. So I don't experience stress anywhere near as much as I used to. It doesn't last as long. I spend less time in it, and it's just happening less often. So that's a habit that kind of like seems to unwind more slowly. So that's the way I've seen habits. They can either disappear like that, or they can, take a time to wind down. Like we've been talking about habits that we want to let go of so far. And yet habits are such a beautiful gift we've been given, this the ability to develop habits. I mean, if we hadn't developed the habit of remembering our name or how to open a door, there's so many habits that have been really helpful in us is learning something first at a level where we can consciously do it, like driving a car, and then it becomes a habit and we don't need to think about it anymore. And that's a beautiful gift we've been given. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share about habits. Habits are great. If you want to let go of a habit, it can happen in an instant, and sometimes it will take time. And both ways, it's about us seeing something about the habit that it makes sense that it's time to let it go.
Hmm. There's something in what you said, Bernie, that reminded me of I like this idea of a habit that I don't know I have. Because the ones I know I have, I probably want them, or I think they work for me because I keep doing them. It's the ones that I don't know. Like I'm just so on autopilot. It's completely out of my awareness. And I saw one for myself a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was over a month ago now. I was walking down the street. I think I have these little insights when I'm walking on the sidewalk because I always see myself on the sidewalk in my memory. And I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with thinking about what other people are thinking. And not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I actually really love to just go, ooh, this person's so interesting. I imagine that they must be thinking that and how the world looks to them. I mean, it's part of what I love about being a coach is that I get to do that, kind of explore and imagine, like learn about people and how they think. It's fascinating. I went, but I'm obsessed with it. And in that moment, I realized that I had what I've been calling a thought hobby or a thought habit of obsessively thinking about what other people are thinking and feeling. Good reasons for it, childhood, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Sometimes I really like it. But then the thought occurred to me, what if I didn't think about what other people were thinking and feeling all the time? And all of a sudden, it was like this vast expanse opened up before me. And I went, what would I do with myself? And I'm not going to say that I've given up that. I don't know. Is it a habit? Who knows? I kind of like it sometimes, but needing to, as soon as I saw that I had a habit of that, like just filling my mind with it habitually, there was a choice in that moment to do something else. Before that, I didn't even know. So that was cool to see.
We talk a lot in this community about habitual thinking. And, it's got the word habit in, habitual thinking. And I see that as thinking that we just do repetitively, multiple times a day, maybe every day, maybe. And it's not new and fresh. It's not really giving us something. Yeah, Michaela, I see, habit, another word for habit is ritual. I mean, I like to think of ritual as being something a little more sacred. That's the meaning I've given it. Whereas habits, we can have good habits and bad habits. I don't think of having bad rituals, but that's me. But habitual thinking is the more we see that we have a lot of habitual thinking, the more we'll notice it and do less of it. I mean, the example you just gave, Steph, was a beautiful example of that. And I love what you said about, this expansiveness became available to you. And I have definitely had that type of experience, but it was less about a specific thing. It was just where I noticed there's more spaciousness available to me because I was just doing less thinking.
I'm really curious. about you who have shown up here to spend this time with us, taking a fresh look at habits. What questions do you have? What would you like to see about habits? Like what's got your curiosity piqued, perhaps? And you can put questions in the chat if you'd like, or if you feel like it's time for me to speak, you can raise your digital hand, which will make it easy for us to see you and call upon you. And that's also available to you, Tom and Kate, because I know you have something to say about habits. I have a feeling, a very strong feeling.
I'll share something. It's good to see you, everybody. So many familiar faces, some I haven't seen in a while. So this is lovely. 7 a.m. in New Zealand, so my brain, coffee is not quite, my habitual coffee hasn't quite kicked in yet. I just can keep hearing this habit of thought, you know, when you say habit, and then Bernie bring habitual thoughts, and you know, it's all, I feel like our behaviors, our habitual behaviors are a reflection of our habitual thinking, the thinking that we entertain regularly without realizing it, that it's like invisible to us. And it made me wonder, you know, what do I have going on that I don't know? You know, with a light hand, you don't have to try to find something or analyze yourself. But yeah, I think one of my habits was to think there was, you know, for example, weight loss was a big thing in my life for a long time. And I had this persistent thought, this persistent thinking that it is hard to lose weight. So with that thought in mind, I mean, what reality can I create? Is one where losing weight is hard. So a few weeks, oh no, actually a few years ago, I thought, well, what if I tell myself the opposite? Losing weight is easy. And to be honest, it was when I wasn't even thinking about losing weight that I lost weight. So I don't know if it's a case of switching your thought to something more positive, or just really you know, leaving all the thoughts behind and just living life and noticing, using our in real time intelligence and common sense, and making, because sometimes, you know, one of the things I realize is, for a while, that I would see food as a treat. I'm treating myself. I'm kind of like giving myself something nice. But then I would eat a bag of popcorn and then I would feel like horrible. So eventually it stopped making sense that it was a treat, because it made me feel horrible. So now when I see a bag of popcorn, I don't feel it. I don't see it the same way. Sorry, Oreo. So it's really interesting how we can think about something in a habitual way, and that's the reality we are going to experience until we question the, you know, the truth of that thinking. So that's what it was coming to me listening about habits. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. See more hands. I think you're next.
Hey, yeah. When you started talking, I had more what Bernie said. That for me, habits was always something I tried to establish. So I was deep into the self-improvement. I read them all, The Power of Habits, Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits, to like make the perfect day, start with working out, meditation, and just get everything perfect, and then finally my life would make sense and I would have live happily ever after. And I have noticed that has in some ways changed, because when I got this email, this is about habits, I was like, oh, you really haven't thought about that in a while. I have not tried to establish any habits in a while, and but I have noticed a couple of things that you might call them habits or behavior patterns that I never even thought about before the three principles. When I listened to, I think her name is Fenella Blackai. She's like the principal of the school in Switzerland, and she that is doing a lot of three principles. And she was doing a talk, and she told that she was talking to one of the new students, and she said like, yeah, and I noticed that she was basically only listening to her own thoughts and what her own voice, and not listening to me at all, and in my head was like, oh, that's what I'm doing all the time. I'm just listening to my own voice, and so often not what other people say. And I just noticed that I think when Bernie was talking, I was like, uh, 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 I was like, oh, I'm there's I'm getting more from my own head than I'm actually listening to another person. So I'm noticing, since I'm more aware, I'm noticing completely different or habits mean something completely different now than they used to. They used to be like, I wanted them to be like to make the plan the perfect life, and now it's more like, oh, I'm noticing that I have a certain behavior pattern, and I can do something with that more than using it as like a tool to really work. So I think that has really changed in my life, that I don't see habits so much anymore as something to fix myself, and more something that I notice.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliant, Bent. And I love how you can like habits are something that we've been taught, you know, I think we hear about habits all the time in the general culture. And the fact that you saw something different about what they meant for you. And I was really struck when you said something, and it kind of is maybe a question for everyone, which is you said something about, if you sort of got a handle on your habits, life would make sense and you would live happily ever after. Right. And so I'm kind of wondering for people, it's another thing to reflect on. What do you think you will get if you get a handle on these habits? And to me, that's like a good question to ask. And maybe as you've discovered, some of those things are available even without getting a handle on your habits. So I think that's very interesting. And then we have Nancy next.
Well, let's see. I hadn't even realized that the subject was habits until I think it was yesterday, and then I started thinking about it a lot, and then I was like, "No, I'm not going to do that," because I was really noticing the difference between just reflective mind and and the thinking mind that is just always going at a fast kind of pace. And so as we were talking here, it was just kind of was kind of that whole thing with the principles that there's like one problem, one solution. And it's not that habits are a problem, but it's just like whenever I'm looking at, living life and just living it from the moment of what's on right now, or what's up right now to do, and just being in that flow, and that I could look at my life and examine it and say, yeah, there's habits here. I do floss my teeth. I don't want my teeth to fall out, and yet there's just something about, I think, kind of the habit of just trying to analyze something or figure it out versus just let myself rest in the feeling, which is a beautiful feeling. And I have a habit of just running away from that and feeling like, oh no, it's not safe to be there in this world because you have to figure things out. And I know that's not true. And I know that if I can rest in the feeling, then something fresh can come. And I think what brought us here too is the quest for fresh thought beyond all of our thinking about it. So that's just what's stirring up, I guess, right now. That's all.
Thank you, Nancy. You know, it was occurring to me that how the ability to create new habits is one of the gifts we've been given. Right? We develop so many habits without any attention going. We may put some attention on it, but the attention might not be on developing the habit, but the habit gets developed. And sometimes I may have said earlier about good and bad habits, and thank you for Carrie for your message talking about, you know, taking a non-moralistic view. So rather than calling them good or bad, like, is it serving me or is it not serving me? And, you know, sometimes we develop habits that do serve me. Sometimes we develop habits that aren't serving me. And so, but this ability to develop habits is something that's built into us. And so I think it's helpful to know that, because it can help us see when there's, oh, I've developed a habit that's not serving me. And you know, sometimes, and this is what Bengt, I think, was alluding to, sometimes we develop a habit for a good reason, and then we discover that it's no longer serving. I mean, I went through something similar to what you said, Bengt, when I was like, okay, in the morning, I'm going to be doing my spiritual practices. And I came up with these different things I was going to do. And then after a while, I realized it was like, it became heavy because it wasn't something that was necessarily nourishing me. And then I just had to let them go. And thankfully, I was able to notice that it wasn't serving me. And that was enough for them just to, for the ones that no longer serve me, to fall away.
You know, one of the things that's occurring to me in this is, like, in any moment, we could say, like, where we're doing something or we're taking an action. You know, we could be eating or drinking something or not. We could be going for a run or not. We could be, you know, whatever. And what's really interesting for me is, like, well, where does the power come for us to do anything from? Like, within us, is there sort of a power in us that's enabling us to do any particular thing that we do? So in terms of habit, I'm kind of curious, and maybe this could be a good discussion question if people are interested. Like, is what we call a habit, like, does does it actually have a power to it, a force that's relevant in the moment to what we're doing? You know, that could be yes or no. And then if you just put aside the question of habits or not, like, what is it in ourselves that is allowing us to do everything that we're doing in every moment? And where does that come from? Because I think the thing about a habit is, like, you know, we had the comment about the good and the bad habit. But the question is, do habits really have a power to them? So I think it's kind of an intriguing question. And there could be a whole range of answers to that, or it could not be an interesting question at all, but it's interesting to me. So I don't know how that sounds. Do you have any thoughts, Kate? Is it okay to put you on the spot?
Basically, you're talking about the power that we have to create habit.
Or to do anything.
Mm. Well, as I'm, like listening to everyone who's spoken so far about habits, I can tell you one of my habits is to sit back and listen to other people as I'm doing that, which is just kind of me. I like sitting back and just kind of listening. And that is definitely one of my go-tos. But as I'm doing that in this habit, right, that I have to sit back and listen and take it all in, the thing that occurred to me was the power that we have to take something, good or bad, call it good or bad, call it a habit, hold it up to look at it, making it more solid than I think that most things are. And it just occurred to me as we're talking about this and we give it all these labels and give it names, that I feel like life and the fact that we're part of life and that gift, I feel like it's more fluid than we realize most of the time. And while we love to create, just as human beings, whether they're good habits, bad habits, habits at all, no habits, like you, Tom, I get a sense that things are so much more fluid. And while it's fun to play in that space where we create and we get to hold it up and show everybody and talk about it, it makes me wonder where I'm completely underestimating the power to be fluid in life and in each moment. Like maybe things aren't as solid as I think that they are. So that's what occurred to me.
As I'm listening to you, Kate, I remember, I think one of the first really big, it might have been the first big insight I had about thought was that I have this thought that behaves like any thought, and I call it a belief. And then it feels like something that makes me or makes the world what it is. It's real, it's heavy, right? So I have this thought that I call a habit. And then when I call it a habit, that's a serious thought. Like that's one I've had a lot. And that means something because I've had it a lot. Or maybe I've had it a lot because it means something. I don't know. It's this thing. But it behaves like any other thought. It comes and it goes. It passes on its own. I can play with it, maybe think it, but as soon as I stop thinking it, it doesn't exist. And I'm wondering if I do the same thing with behaviors that I call a habit. So I have a habit of, let's see, okay, here's one. This is a real habit. I have a habit of checking my phone when I wake up. Now, there are plenty of resources out there that say, do not do that. That's bad. It's going to get you in your head and you're like, you're in urgency and now you're distracted by whatever your emails, right? So if I call that a habit, something I do habitually, does it have more meaning than I check my phone? Is it really any different than I scratch my, I was going to say nose and I'm scratching my forehead, but I scratched my forehead. Is it any different than any other action? I don't think so. Except that I think so. And it might feel like there is, but there isn't. I think with like a habit, sometimes there's an urgency which can only be thought, right? Anything urgent has to be thought. Oh, I gotta eat that chocolate. Oh, I gotta check my phone. Oh, I gotta bite my nails, whatever it is. Like there's this urgency. It must be thought. The action itself is neither good nor bad, urgent or non-urgent. It's just a thing.
Earlier today, I was thinking about habits, and one of the things that came to me is that I, and probably many other people, have a habit of believing our stories, that we buy into our stories. And yet that's a habit, which is made of thought. And I think I'm mentioning it because, well, is my microphone loud enough?
I can hear.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Like believing our stories is something that I know it's very habitual for me. The stories I tell about myself, about other people, and I believe them, doesn't make them true. And when I see that I'm in a story that I've made up, something else is possible. So, and yet, I think the reason I wanted to mention it is because it's very habitual for me to be believing the stories that I have. And once I see that it's A, a habit, B, that that I'm doing that, I'm buying into my own stories. Now there's possibility for something new.
Well, on that subject of seeing something new, which is another way of taking a fresh look or seeing something fresh, I'm curious if people, in this little bit of time that we've been together, are you seeing anything new or fresh or interesting, or are you just having a good time hanging out with us, or both? So you don't necessarily have to speak, but it's nice just to maybe take that question and reflect on it for a second. Like, is there anything, just new or fresh or interesting that you're seeing right now about habits or about anything? Could be about anything.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Hi, Naomi.
Hi, yeah, I'm on my phone. And I was in the car earlier, so that's why I didn't have my camera on. And I was really happy to see the topic of habits because I've been struggling with habits. Like the woman a couple of people ago was talking about weight. And the power of habits is a really interesting question. And sometimes I think that, establishing certain behaviors to potentially have a very positive success of whatever it is. And, health is mainly where I look at things. But so to me, that would be a very powerful, if one wanted good health. Maybe one doesn't, but if one wanted good health, both spiritually, emotionally, physically, the whole gamut, that would be, a very positive power. It would be a powerful habit to establish eating habits wherein the outcome is very positive. So I think, and the same thing with exercise, and which is really strange to me, and I hadn't thought about this before, but I've established a really positive exercise habit where I do exercise almost every day. And that was just very easy for me to do. But the eating part is a whole other ball game. So, and you're smiling. So,
Well, partly I'm smiling because just when you said I thought of something I hadn't thought about before,
yeah.
and so whatever we're talking about, that just always makes my heart happy. For that. And anything else you want to say?
No, I'm just going to keep listening.
Okay. And before we go to Ben, I just wanted to note that in the comments, Ren said, I have a habit of believing my thinking. So that's a good one.
Yeah, for me, just when Tom reflected back to me a couple of things I said, I started wondering, it's like, why is it actually that habits don't seem to matter so much anymore? And I think it is mainly because where I think or where I used to think happiness comes from is no longer the same thing. Or oftentimes, maybe it is still habitual. The thinking is like, oh, if this would happen or that would happen, that would make me happy. But that's not my experience at all. I just remember a couple of days before Christmas, I hadn't really slept a lot. I was hungry, so it's like the circumstances were, and I was packing Christmas presents, which for some people it might be a good thing, but for me that is really like not something I want to be doing. But I was there with my wife, and at some point I realized, because I had seen a movie, at this line from the movie where the kind of narrator asked like if the main character was actually realized that he was happy in that moment, and that came up, and I was like, I am really happy right now, and I was really happy 5 minutes ago, and it's like, and and it was really like a amazing experience because I was happy and I knew it. It wasn't just like, I realized like after the fact that, oh, that was a really great moment this morning, but it was like I was sitting there and I could honestly say I'm really happy right now, and still thoughts were coming in and they were going, and it didn't matter. It was just like, yeah, I'm really happy now, and I remember this feeling has lasted for a couple of minutes, and that is something, and there was no like outward reason why that moment should have been so happy. It was like not it's not like that I was in a bad place, but it was no, I didn't win anything, I didn't get anything, there was no, you know, outside influence that made me happy. And I think that's so much the difference why habits don't really matter that much anymore, because I don't think anymore that they lead to anything that really fundamentally changes my life or make me really happy. They can help me do things, but not be happy and have a good life.
I think that's the best reason at all of all, is to be happy for no reason at all.
Extent. Nikayla.
Mhm. Yeah, this is, our thoughts and our habit of thinking and looking at and exploring, and it's quite enjoyable and very entertaining, I find. And I see habit really as efficiency. It's just an efficiency that's kind of come in at some point to serve. And maybe it carries on, like flossing and brushing teeth throughout a lifetime, which seems to be helpful. And then others that they just lose their purpose changes. It's like it's not the it's whatever the purpose was for it at one point, it's run its course. And I guess that's the thing about being present in this moment is seeing it fresh, is seeing something new. I love, questioning the truth. I heard Byron Katie's, words echo in my mind when I heard that. It's just like, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Like we could ask that every moment when, something comes up that feels, if it feels good, go for it. True or not, who cares? Feels good, not hurting anyone. That's nice. But if it's holding you back, and that's why I came on today, was habits. Like, oh yeah, I want to be reminded that really it's nothing. It's poof, it's puff, it's cloud, it's nothing. I want to be reminded of that. So anyway, it's my 2 cents. Enjoying the reflections coming up. And Tom, it was a brain buster for me what he was, getting to. But one thing I wrote down is like the power within is an enabler. It's we are able. And that creative energy is enabling us to do anything.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's interesting when I think about the things I do, the actions I take that I think I shouldn't take. I'm apt to call a bad habit or a habit that doesn't serve me. And what's interesting is that as soon as it actually looks like something, like it really looks like something doesn't serve me, I will stop doing it. as long as there's something about it that looks like it's helping me, making me feel better, I'll probably keep doing it. And there's one recent one. I don't do New Year's resolutions, but I like the feeling and the thought of fresh start and reflecting on what would I love to create? Might I like to change now? What's happening now? And somewhere in the midst of this reflection, it occurred to me, I wonder what would happen if I stopped having chocolate every day. Because I had this habit of eating chocolate usually in the afternoon when my energy dips. Not a lot, but I could feel it doing something to my body that maybe wasn't so great. And so I just I wondered about it, and I didn't make a real choice or decision. I didn't make a resolution. I just was like, well, I wonder, what if I do an experiment and I just, for a week, I don't eat chocolate and see what happens, see how my body feels. And man, within 2 days, before the 2 days, I can feel the difference in my body, actually, because it actually wasn't just chocolate. That was the main culprit, but it was processed sugars. I said, okay, I'm just not going to eat processed sugars for a while and see how it feels. Do I notice a difference? And as I notice it, it doesn't make sense. If my body's feeling better and it makes my body feel bad, then it doesn't make sense for me to eat it, at least not right now. And I didn't try to make that happen. I didn't like make a big deal about it because I could have, and I have in the past. I used to do like I was very controlled with my eating, and then I would allow myself to binge on Sundays. And man, would I binge. My ex-husband used to say it was like a shark with chum in the water. It was everything. Ice cream, cereal, everything was all the sugars, all the bad stuff. Bad, right? It was a big deal then. And now it really doesn't look like that big of a deal if I eat it or not. But taking it lightly lets me see something new about it. Does it serve me now? Does it make sense now? Hi, Nancy.
Yeah, when you were speaking, I was just having that feeling of, wisdom in the moment, and that it's really our gift that we have wisdom from moment to moment to moment to moment. And the wisdom to just say, is it really true that I really want this? You know? And that, I don't know, wisdom can sometimes be like, it's just the big things, but it's just, moment to moment, it's just wisdom is, yeah, it's a good idea right now to take a nap. It's a good idea right now just to get up and walk around rather than, have to follow a routine of how many steps am I going to do every day. Yeah. Anyway, it just struck me when you were talking that it was wisdom coming in that moment. Thanks.
What else are you noticing? It's maybe a little different than what you've seen before. Sometimes it's just a feeling. Something feels different. I like that. I can't always put my finger on it. Something's different.
You know, one of the words that I like that's sort of on the topic and subject is orientation or reorienting. And so when I think of, for example, you know, what Sydney Banks has said about looking within, finding a nice feeling, you know, that kind of thing. And that how it looks to me is, you know, after I heard that, and then actually just really did it for myself and found something. The way my mind now kind of looks at that is that it's like, oh, it sort of reoriented my mind or my consciousness to that happening over and over again. Now that sounds like a habit, doesn't it? So it's interesting. You know, there's something going on, and I think it goes back to, you know, earlier about really kind of reflecting on, you know, where is the power in anything? Where is the power in the habit? Where is the power in the moment to moment and doing what we're doing? But I guess I just wanted to share, I really like that, currently like that term orient, you know, something you can see something and it can just give you a different orientation to see it more and more, especially if it helps, if it's something helpful.
Earlier this morning, I listened to a physician, and he was talking about steps. So Stephanie mentioned just, you know, having to achieve a certain number of steps, and he was saying that the 10,000 steps that we are supposed to be achieving is an urban myth. And so it goes to what is truth. So his backup for it was that in the 60s, there was a Japanese company that made a pedometer, and they hired a marketing company to help them market their pedometer. And this marketing company just liked the theory of 10,000 steps, or the way it sounded, or the way it looked, I don't know. And so that, since the 1960s, has become the gold standard of what people are supposed to do. And it's not true. So it goes to, I guess, looking for the truth and what we're trying to establish as habits.
It's so funny that sometimes when I have noticed the habit of checking my phone, especially first thing in the morning, sometimes I judge myself for it because there's so many people out there, voices saying that's a horrible thing to do, like it's bad. And when I actually sit with it, I don't do it all the time, by the way. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I do it intentionally because it serves me in that moment to help me wake up. If I'm really tired, I'll go back to sleep. But if I like get interested in something, I wake up and then I'm up and now I'm moving. Isn't that funny? It's like sometimes it serves me, this very same thing. Sometimes it serves me and sometimes it doesn't. But if I pick it up, it doesn't mean I'm doomed to live the rest of my day. What is the phrase they use? There's a phrase. We love to make things make thoughts into things. It's something like other people are pushing my buttons then all day long. I'm in reaction all day long. Like, no, it doesn't mean that. At any moment, I'm right here.
I could share something. I know we only got a couple minutes left, so this will be quick, but what I'm noticing is there's kind of habits or behaviors that come from my thinking, like I shouldn't do this or I should do that, and then there's things that kind of come about because I'm seeing something different. And I watched a video. It was a strange little video by I think his name's Joel Snape. And I kind of like his stuff, and it was like how I learned to be bored and how it changed my life or something. And I was just curious, and I watched it, and it was talking about how he just gives himself time to just sit and be bored. And that had never really occurred to me. And then I thought, well, that's interesting. Let me just try that out. Let me just sit and see what that's like. And it was like it kind of reset everything for me. It was like, oh, this, there's kind of like a pure enjoyment. And I realized how much of the time I'm always on my computer or my phone, or I'm writing in my journal, or I'm reading a book, or I'm busy thinking about, what I have to do or what I should be doing, or what do the three principles say, or all the different thoughts that kind of run through my head. And it's just really refreshing. And I just started doing that from time to time, not because I think I should or anything. It's just because it's enjoyable. And it's just like very fresh. It gives me like a whole new kind of baseline to start with. I'm not starting from that place of, I need to fill my time or be busy. It's just like, oh, it's just pretty pleasant to sit here and do nothing. And it's a little awkward. I mean, like I've done that in waiting rooms where people are, everybody's on their phone. They used to be reading magazines, and to sit there and not have my phone out, it kind of feels strange at first, or in a coffee shop or something, not to have my phone out, just to kind of sit there. So anyway, that's my enjoyable call. I'm having a lot of allergies, so I didn't talk earlier, but great to be here.
Thanks, Dan. Great to have you here. Would have thought that being bored could be so enlightening and refreshing, and probably not boring, actually, in its experience at all. Yeah. All right, lovelies. I think we're at the end of our time, and we shall meet again on the second Thursday of next month with a new theme to be determined. If you would like to put in a vote for one, you can reach out to any one of us or respond to an email if you got an email reminding you to be here. And oh, was there a little announcement, Kate? Are you ready? For the event?
Sure, absolutely. So Bernie, Tom, and I, and possibly a special guest that's on this call, maybe if she can get into the States and be here for it. We're actually doing a one-day retreat in Sarasota, February 1st. If you're interested in finding out more about that, we're going to spend a day in a conversation very similar to this about possibility and looking at things fresh. And it's going to be actually within a park. So it'll be basically talking about our innate well-being and nature while in nature. And so we're excited. So if you're interested in anything like that, let us know. We'll send you some information.
Thanks,
And
Kate.
that,
Yeah.
that's on Saturday, February the 1st. And on Sunday, we may do something that's more communal, more activity based. So if you're interested, there'll be part 2 as well.
Gorgeous.
Thank you, everybody. This was lovely.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.